Well, thanks so much, David, for giving me the opportunity to share. So my career history is in the pharmaceutical space, the medical device space, and everything that we do in there is regulated, obviously, very highly through, different governing bodies, the FDA, things like that. So I'm the type of person that I get really, really, really excited to talk about regulations. Like, I will talk to y'all all day long about the Code of Federal Regulations. And what really, really fires me up is when we can make the connection about what the regulation says and why it's actually important. How does this impact what we do on a day-to-day basis? And, all of those hoops that we're having our associates jump through, in their systems, with their processes, things like that. If they understand the why behind it, it makes the hoop jumping less burdensome for them and increases the compliance. They'll be more likely to go ahead and jump through those hoops on their own, creating less work for us on the back end. So I like to try and bring my passion for the regulations into whatever I'm doing. So, a couple years back, we started talking about how I could bring, my previous history from other areas of drug development and the knowledge of the regulations and the audits that we have to go through and apply it in a contact center environment. And believe it or not, it was pretty easy to do. There were a lot of best practices and things that I've learned from previous roles that really set us up for success here. I knew right away. I know that y'all have heard me talk a lot before about the culture of the customer service team in Alcon and just how critically important it is. And that was something that I wanted to be very cognizant of and therefore very deliberate about whenever we were building out this internal self-assessment program. Simply, even from the naming convention, we didn't want to call it an internal audit program because the second you start talking about audits, people kind of, oh gosh, here come the police with their checklist and clipboards and here to tell me everything I'm doing wrong. So we have taken the word audit completely out of our vocabulary. Now we do this in order to be more audit ready because we know audits are going to come our way either from third parties or from health authorities or, just corporate audits in general. And we want to be ready for those. So, but with our associates, we've taken that word kind of out of our vocabulary. So our internal self-assessment program really marries two important pieces, the quality piece, which is focused on that, getting better, getting to the next step, the process improvements, good business practices, any kind of enhancements that we can make, as well as that mandatory compliance piece that people, me is the exception, I guess. People don't really get all that excited about, right? That's where we're looking at internal and external audits, the financial controls that we have to comply to. And, I was looking at some of the folks on the call. I'm sure that y'all are nodding your heads, knowing exactly what I'm talking about. And then our SOPs, our policies, procedures, things like that, that we tell our folks that they have to follow, and so we need them to follow them for a very specific reason, right? So our internal self-assessment program kind of approaches that from both directions and then looks at individual teams to see kind of where they are and what they can do to get better. So Michelle, if you could click, thanks. So this is the kind of documented purpose of our internal self-assessment program. And really, I know that y'all have heard this a million times before. If it's not measured, it can't be improved, right? So this is another way for us to get a lot of data, a lot of metrics on current state and to figure out what we can do to make it better. Let's create more frictionless experiences, not only for our customers, but for our associates as well. We want to remove any boundaries and hurdles for our associates just to let them do their work brilliantly and create those, amazing, delightful customer experiences that we're all striving for. So for us, what we have determined works best, we conduct one internal self-assessment per quarter. I have two ladies on my quality and compliance team that are responsible for doing this. And it's not just the 1 week of the internal self-assessment. Their pre-work for this, they're deep diving into reports and things like that, starts about 6 weeks in advance. And that's where they look at in detail every policy and procedure that team follows, pulls different reports from financial reporting, from, inventory reporting, things like that. And then the internal self-assessment itself lasts about a week. They do a lot of job shadowing. So, over the past year with COVID, it kind of enabled us to pivot, gave us a new opportunity to try some solutions out. And we figured out actually that job shadowing remotely was a lot more effective and less kind of stressful for the associates. So they job shadow and kind of, walk them through the process and ask questions. How did you know how to do that? Can you show me what you do next? Can you tell me what happens if this happens? So they, spend a lot of time with the associates. They spend a lot of time with the leadership of the team, asking questions and just getting as much information as they can. And then after the internal self-assessment is over, they have about 30 days to wrap up the final report and then submit that and any findings. Any findings that we have are going to have an associated CAPA. If you're familiar with what CAPAs are, it stands for corrective action and preventive action. One of the things that we have found, it's oftentimes easy to do the corrective action because that's kind of reactive and just going back to fix things. It takes a little more effort on their part to figure out what to do for the preventive action. Like, okay, we've gone back and changed that, we've added that approval, we've done this, but what can we do moving forward to make sure that this error doesn't happen again in the future? Like, do we need to look at system enhancements? Do we need to look at process improvements in a way? So, that's kind of more of the heavy lifting, and we track metrics on all of that, and then we report all of that to our customer service leadership team so that they can, stay up to date with the current state of where the teams are in this, but also because in this process, we are very deliberate about highlighting best practices. So we want to socialize those best practices and make sure that all of the other teams know what brilliant things the other teams are doing so that we can, replicate that and get other teams on board with that. So some of the benefits of our internal self-assessment program, obviously better representation of us whenever we're in the audits. We show up to the audits and, 9 times out of 10, the auditor's like, you really don't even have any questions. And that's an audit dream for me, right? Just fly under their radar because all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. We've been proactive enough to anticipate what their questions are going to be and make sure that, our house is nice and tidy before they show up. It also builds stronger relationships with our colleagues not only in customer service, but throughout the rest of the organization. So, a lot of the times our associates, our individual contributors will hear like, oh, we have a QMS audit upcoming, like, oh, that sounds really scary and stressful. And they don't ever really get to see what goes on behind closed doors. So they're not getting the exposure to it. They're not getting the understanding of what happens and why it's important. So through the internal self-assessment program, we try to give them an opportunity to experience what an audit feels like. So we have an opening meeting, we have closing meetings, we do the shadowing, we ask a lot of questions so that they can get that experience. It might be a pretty critical career experience for them that they, might suddenly decide, oh, wow, this is really exciting. This is kind of a passion of mine. I get why Jaedeanne's so excited about the regulations, and so might open up a career development path for them. It also kind of helps them put the puzzle pieces together so that they can understand why what they do is important and how it has a broader downstream impact that they might not be seeing whenever they're just looking at their own little silo. So we're very collaborative throughout the internal self-assessment program, we've been very deliberate not to create an environment of contention with it. From the vocabulary that we use through even the follow-up after the internal self-assessment's over, the resolution of the corrective action and preventive action, we're very collaborative, and it's truly a business partnership. We want to help them succeed in this. And it's given us an opportunity to share this program with other areas outside of our organization as well within Alcon. So that's helped us develop some really, really strong relationships there. It's given us, like I mentioned earlier, the chance to socialize those good business practices with the other teams. So those things that people might have kind of started as a grassroots initiative, or someone on their team has found a more efficient way of doing something, let's get everybody on board with that. Let's change our procedure to where it better supports what the actual process is, so that they're in alignment, and then to make sure that it's done consistently throughout the organization. So we really like that part of it. And another benefit of the internal self-assessment program has been ensuring business continuity. I know that we had a really good discussion about business continuity a couple months ago here. And, this is just another way to kind of help us say, okay, well, we know that Logan is the one guy that always knows how to do XYZ. If Logan wins the lottery and retires to an island in the Caribbean, who's going to know how to do his job when he's gone? So, this is where we kind of do a deep dive into that as far as the business continuity goes and succession planning and things. Okay. So this really has been recognized. I mean, I don't want to toot our own horn here, but we'll toot it for a little bit. Our internal self-assessment program has been recognized as a gold standard within Alcon from our corporate audit and compliance teams. The brains behind all of this is a girl on my team, Melissa, who unfortunately wasn't able to attend. She's on FTO with her family this week, but she was the one that really she's done a lot of the legwork for the development of this program. So all of the credit goes to her. She's absolutely brilliant and probably has one of the highest learning agilities of anybody I've ever met in my entire life. And no one can steal her from me. So, she put together a playbook, and this internal self-assessment playbook is really it's kind of like the plug and play instructions that you get with like a new device. It tells other parts of the organization how they can implement a similar program. What do they need to look at? What are the timing? Where are the templates? Things like that, so they can build it out within their own space. And then beyond that, we consult with them as they start to build it out. We're there to answer questions and kind of guide them along the way. And lastly, it has definitely contributed to a quality culture. As I mentioned earlier, it's a lot more collaborative instead of punitive. That's one thing that in my career, which is several years at this point, anytime people talk about QA or compliance, it comes with that stigma of someone walking around with a clipboard and checking boxes and, looking down their nose at you as they tell you what you've done wrong. And we've really kind of broken the mold here, and we've gotten away from that to where we really are viewed as business partners within the organization. I get that feedback from a lot of our leaders about it, how beneficial it is and how much more efficient that it really makes their teams. We also have implemented something called a Quality Champion Award. So quarterly, we identify someone within the organization who has gone above and beyond from a quality perspective, really looking at things through that quality lens. And we award them with a day of PTO, and then they get a little award for their desk as well. I mentioned earlier about the developmental opportunities. this has, opened up a lot of avenues for folks as they want to learn more about it. We welcome people who want to shadow during our internal self-assessment process. And the other groups that we're expanding into, it's a good stretch assignment as they build something out using the playbook in their own spaces. Bill Walker, who I don't think was able to join today, he had a conflict. He is the head of customer service for Alcon, and he is one of our biggest cheerleaders. He is a big proponent of the internal self-assessment program, and he really does understand and get the importance of quality and compliance in an environment like ours, taking the whole medical device industry out of it, just in the contact center environment. He understands the criticality of it there. And so, the top-down support from leadership has been really, really critical for this. And then ultimately, the one thing that was the biggest win for me is really seeing how people are connecting the dots and viewing things through the quality lens. And it has just gone through our department, and people are getting excited about quality, which was obviously near and dear to my heart.